All right.
That was an interesting so far.
That was a fun. So, Chris, it's good you were on. You spiced everything up, made it good. Matt, what's up, baby?
What's up, Jeremy?
Steve, thank you, 77 people, for being here. All right, time to talk about the fun company. The company that's doing things. The company that's changing the world.
I'd like to mention that I'm still trending on the Palantir article, by the way.
Why do you think the article is trending? Your Seeking Alpha article.
The Palantir ones usually trend. A lot of people click on them.
It's a good article. It had a lot of charts. We're going to go through it as well.
I put a lot of stuff in it, so we'll see.
It was good.
You know, I think you guys get some props, man. You guys, well, Amit was definitely mentioned. Arnie was mentioned on some articles I read about Palantir, about how they're like.
We want to start with that? We got to start with that?
Yeah,
I forgot
sure.
that news this week.
Go for it.
Okay, so there was an article by Fast Company. It's a pretty big mainstream media business blog. And the concept around the article was why Palantir has a fandom around it. Why people on the internet are interested in stock. So I talked to the journalist about a month ago, and she is a typical type of Palantir's evil person. I mean, she kind of told me, she's like, yeah, she doesn't really agree with Palantir. But the reason for the article was like, why does she think that millions of people are obsessed with this evil company? And so over the course of some conversations with me and Arnie, who's also a fellow member in the community, she kind of at least got it. I don't think she switched her opinion on Palantir, but she at least understood our perspective. So what did you guys think of the article in regards to Palantir, the community? We've been doing this podcast for 83 weeks. Chris and I started this 83 weeks ago, and who would have fucking thought Fast Company would reach out to us to talk about this podcast, which is kind of the epicenter of a lot of this community. You know, if you don't have a weekly thing kind of going, it's hard to keep it going. So Chris, what were your thoughts?
You should have told her go fuck herself, man. She didn't exactly paint you in the greatest of lights. You know, she made you sound kind of, because she made you sound like a hopeless, delusional person that doesn't necessarily know what he's talking about, and basically just tried to highlight the crazy following instead of the reason and logic that you're actually bringing to this company.
That's true. Right? And I did talk to her for an hour, and she didn't take any of my quotes about why I like
that's the thing that's the thing I hate about journalists, and why I would be very remiss to speak to a journalist without guarantee that the entirety of that interview would be published, because they can take your words and manipulate them in a certain way to basically make you sound a certain, or make you into like a caricature rather than a reasoned person. Like if I said, hey, I like this, I like that, blah, 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 I don't agree with this, you know, they can take the parts that I do like and completely ignore the things that I don't agree with, which my reasoned arguments, and basically make me look like I'm a cult member. Because that's exactly what she tried to paint a lot of the investors like, that they're cult members. And it's stupid. It's stupid.
I didn't like that she included, when I said Tesla investors care about every Elon's last fart. I was saying that in the heat of a conversation with her for an hour, and like I just didn't like that she picked that quote as like one of my main quotes for the article. So that was a little annoying as well.
Yeah, and then I would say next time, record the entire conversation.
Yeah.
Or do it over Zoom and tell her you are recording, or anybody. That way you can release the whole thing. That way you're not taken out of context. Like that stuff's very important. Because like Chris said, they can chop it up and just give one little thing, and I don't know.
And especially if they have an agenda already, dude, that's like right there is like your Achilles heel. Because now what they can do is go to the most, like, the worst parts of the worst parts of the Palantir community and make that a highlight of it, you know.
Or
I do think the article was rather neutral, though, in terms of
aligns with what her vision is.
Yeah, but I do think the article wasn't trying to say Palantir is a meme community. I think she did kind of, like, Arnie's comments were really good when he said, I didn't invest until the financials got to like $8-9 when I got interested, right? So I think that part was really good, at least adding. She talked about Edwin. Edwin was talking about some of the bear case. I mean, like, I don't think it was a hit piece per se on the community. I think the agenda was definitely, oh, look at this crazy meme community. But the article didn't follow through on the agenda in a way a Vice article would, in my opinion. Matt, your thoughts on it?
I didn't actually read it. I didn't know that there was an article. All I saw was that Chamath was chirping up in Arnie's tweets. But other than that, I didn't see that there was an article out. Hopefully, they didn't mention anything about some stupid UDoc engineer.
What did you guys think about her necessity to write the article, Chris? Like, this is a pretty left-wing journalist. If you go through some of her other stuff, I think her name is Katie. She obviously hated that Elon bought Twitter, kind of typical like hate speech, free speech type of bullshit. Why do you think she wanted to write the article in the first place around Palantir?
Because she knows her days are numbered. You know, I think every journalist who's coming to journalism with a bias, their days are numbered because people are gonna basically turn you into the most irrelevant part of society eventually. And I think it's already happening. There's very little there's very little trust in the media in general. And if you are going into a single interview with a biased opinion, then you're not a real journalist. All you really are is just a hack trying to prove a point. You're looking for ghosts where there are none. So I say, congratulations, you put out something that you may have thought may have been a win, but I don't think it was a win. I think it's just showing that now you have to go into the most irrelevant cases to prove out some of the more like ideological BS that you carry in your own head. You know, that's all.
I will say that in general, although I didn't read the article, I do start seeing more and more people in the comment section starting to chirp up just about that, which is basically that they're not trusting the mainstream media these days, and the pendulum is kind of swinging into, and why YouTube has gained so much popularity as of late, which is, you know, people are being rather honest. And yes, there's the opposite side too, where people are forgetting about every single risk and uncertainty when it comes to investing and yada yada yada. But I think you're starting to see, whether it's this mainstream geopolitical conversations, stocks, you know, what have you, I think people are really starting to understand that everyone has their biases, and they're trying to eliminate those that only have one sort of bias, which is either negative or super positive. And I think that they're looking for those that are kind of more so in the middle.
To your point, Matt, I mean, she wanted a couple of videos to watch. So I sent her a code strap interview, and I sent her the interview I did with Sean from IBM, a former IBM guy. And I do not think she watched those two interviews, because when she got on the call with me, like 4 days later, she didn't know what the fuck Palantir did. And so that's why I agree with your point that YouTube is gaining more popularity, because like obviously my channel is pretty niche focused on Palantir, but it means that there's a sense of at least trust people have on this channel, where you can at least, you're getting a guy who kind of knows what he's talking about when it comes to Palantir.
But whereas kind of knows, also bring in people like Chris, who often and sometimes Sachin to an extent, which show the chinks in the armor, or
right, 100%,
the holes that might be in their strategies and what have you, right? So we always try to provide, and Chris, you know, while he gets a lot of hate sometimes in the comment section about being too negative, you know, I think that that's the sort of the dichotomy
reality
that
check
we want to have, and the reality check that we need to have on these sorts of conversations.
Chris, go ahead.
Can you put the link in the chat so everyone can read it themselves, and maybe by the end of the podcast they can comment, and basically we can do a poll: was it a hit piece or not? You know, I think that would be good, because I just want to know, did I feel like it was a hit piece? Yes. Did anyone else feel like a hit piece? I want to know the opinions of other people. You know,
I think it's also really interesting because like the world of investing has so fundamentally changed, where like now there's literally internet communities of thousands and thousands of people that talk about one or two stocks all day. And either we're going to be right or wrong on Palantir is this big, amazing company that's going to change the world. But I think all of us are on this journey, given this, like, I don't think we're apes, you know, I think there's some people like that, but I really do think this is one of the smartest communities in the world. And obviously she doesn't feel that way because she totally does not like Palantir. So that's the only reason I gave her my comments. I was like, look, this is a cool thing for the community to get mentioned by the mainstream media, and hopefully she paints it in a light. I can't editorially change anything she says. I even asked her at the end, I was like, yo, is this going to be a hit piece? Like, I straight up asked her, and she was like, no, because like Fast Company can't accuse a company of being evil. Like, we can't get away with that.
See, like, here's the one comment when I read the thing that I really did not like. Let me just share it really quick with you guys.
But you realize, though, I mean, she probably got exactly what she wanted, because she's sitting here in front of several hundred people getting viewership.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
The nature of Palantir as a company and the level of devotion and sheer quantity of social media content being made just about this stock sets it apart. Palantir decline. Okay, not that part right here. Tesla's community has a legit fandom. And when I mean fandom, I literally mean people who make content day in and day out, videos, tweets, podcasts, all about the company, analyzing every last fart that Elon Musk
I wish she didn't
releases.
include that quote. That was not the.
She included that because once again, it made you look a little bit weak. Like, oh,
Yeah.
this guy is just clout chasing. That's the literal meaning that I got from this, and that's not what you're doing, because you're actually physically investing also. If you were just clout chasing, you would just talk about them and not put your own money at stake. That's the biggest difference, Like a lot of this, like I said, I read through this. I read it about 2-3 times, and it's the stuff that she put on here, like the whole thing with Daddy Carp, even though that's like an inside joke, or like Carpetto thing. Like, really, this is the level of journalism that you've got, like Peely and the defense of democracy. Like, I get it that as a community, sometimes we can come off a little bit like childish, but dude, that's normal. That is a normal part of a community. But she took the lowest part of the community and she put that up for grabs, and instead of focusing on, hey, look, these guys discovered early on that this company was doing X, Y, and Z, and have been doing their best to explain to the general community what Palantir actually does, report on all the great progress that they're making, and then she didn't even mention any of the part where fucking Palantir helps Ukraine fight the war. Come on,
it was interesting because Time Magazine 2 weeks ago did a phenomenal piece on Palantir. So it's like you got really good mainstream coverage, and then you got Fast Company. I thought she actually wanted to do a deep dive into Palantir's community, but she definitely painted it not in the best way. But I don't think it was a total hit piece. In my opinion.
Look, Fast Company is a business publication, correct?
Yeah, but they're not like the Financial Times.
But wouldn't it be nice if one of these journalists that wrote an article in a business publication actually did some type of financial analysis on the company?
There was nothing.
You would think that would just make sense.
Yeah. There was no inclusion of any of the numbers and metrics, because that's also what gets us excited. I mean, the reason we're excited is because we think this thing can really grow. And so, yeah, it was an interesting thing. I mean, it was cool for the community. I guess for us, we love the whole Daddy Carp stuff being in the mainstream media, because it's like, all right, fuck it. I think Palantir definitely declined to comment, because I think it's the same reason Noto doesn't want to be on SoFi Weekly, even though he knows what it is. I think a lot of these stocks don't want to be seen as meme stocks. And if they associate, like the AMC CEO actually talked to like the AMC apes on YouTube, like he went on their live streams and all that. I don't think Carp or Noto want that, even though they kind of would love to do that, but they don't want to, because Bank of America will be like, what the fuck are you doing? Right? And I can't blame them for that at that level. Okay, cool. Next topic, AIP Con 2. We're getting a second AIP Con. Steve, why is this happening, and what does this mean about Palantir?
If it doesn't mean that there's more interest in different people presenting, I don't know why they're doing it. So I am hoping that there is a tremendous amount of interest in this. They've made significant strides in the platform, and they're going to showcase all the new features, and they're going to have new presenters, and hopefully it generates a lot more buzz. So we're going to have to say.
Chris, any thoughts on AIP 2 being good for Palantir?
I haven't really seen it, so I can't. But I think the general move towards doing more on-site presentations and like physically interacting with customer clients and future clients is going to be a big driver in future revenue. You have to invest in the sales portion of your business. Okay, no matter what you do, you want to send out your sales engineers, fine, but if you don't run these conferences, you won't get brand awareness out. And sometimes these industry leading events are the perfect venue to pick up a big fish that makes the entire cost of doing this well worth it, and sometimes in excess, way in excess of what the cost would totally be. So I think they need to do this all the time. Like Snowflake does it with SnowCon, Databricks does it with their thing.
Look what Salesforce does with the Dreamforce conference.
Oh God, geez,
they take over the entire city of San Francisco.
Yeah. Like every major SaaS player has to do it, because they need to get that part of the business out there to look at what we're doing. We have like Salesforce is like really pushing Einstein AI right now, right? But like during the conference, that'll be a big part of their presentation. For Snowflake, they're doing something called Snowpark, which is a really great product for them, but that is like the place where they highlight it. And then they have like other things where they'll like work with startups and they'll have like presentation. So this move is great from a marketing standpoint, and I think it's well worth the dollars that they spend on it.
Matt, your thoughts?
I think it's prudent to do something like this, because June 1st was really the first day that they released AIP. And there were several clients that were able to get it in the April-May timeframe, I think, that were kind of beta testers, just like a lot of people, myself included, were kind of beta testers for the initial Foundry offering. And then it kind of got rolled out, to the broader market, later on. I think what I want to see is hopefully it's not Jacobs showing up again. Although I love Jacobs and I love their presentations, I think what we need to see is somebody brand new, fresh, that has yet to go to any of these Foundry cons or AIP cons to present. I'd love people from UDOC to show up. They went to the first Foundry con, but I don't think they've been able to go since. But I'd love to see really when people got the product in their hands and how quickly they've been able to move. And just from the evidence that, say, CodeStrap and others have seen from recent AIP demos, they're truly energized by what they're seeing. And, I'm hoping that they get the same energized feeling that I got when I first saw it. I guess it was like mid-May or late May when I saw it before AIP Con #1 rolled out. And so I'm looking forward to it. I think it's prudent. I think that, what I would love to see is kind of the list of people showing up, way ahead of time. But just like the first AIP Con, I'm going to be streaming it at work, probably watching it.
I have a suggestion. So if Palantir, you folks are watching, because I know you're watching, right, Amit?
Oh, 100% watching.
I have one suggestion for you guys, and maybe you can bring this up with Alex Karp, whoever. Instead of having the CIOs or someone high up in the C-suite present, have the lowest man on the totem pole that uses Palantir Foundry and AIP do the presentation.
I ain't going.
Not you particularly, but I'm saying someone at that level. And the reason why I say that is because let's say you're a leader, right? The CEO, CIOs, yes, I'm sure that this is something that's going to be a valuable tool for them, but they are at the top. You want someone at the bottom who actually benefits to highlight why this benefits. Because at the end of the day, there's going to be 10 times as many users at the bottom level that uses this than someone at the top who's just using it as a fucking dashboard.
I thought the Cleveland Health guys did a really good job at AIP Con #1. Yeah. They didn't talk about AIP to an extent, but they talked more about, I think it was Foundry and the systems that they set up. And I think from that perspective, that was more frontline. And I think that was a great presentation by both.
I would love to see something like a nurse do the presentation next time. Or if they're a factory floor worker, to have someone on the factory floor be like, look, I log into my Palantir instance and I do this. It helps me do this. I was able to work with my supervisor to do X, Y, and Z. And this is how you remember that commercial that they had with that girl from Airbus and from Germany? Remember where she was she just started and she was able to use Palantir Foundry to kind of help develop certain processes and everything. That is what you want. You already did last cycle. You did your CIOs, your CEOs, and your CTOs do presentations. Now get the guys on the ground.
I see what you're saying, Chris, because it's like they talk like this is going to sound kind of like contrarian, but I hear what Karp says when he says we're not just a PowerPoint, but then you get up at AIP Con or Foundry Con and it's a PowerPoint of the things that they do, like the tools that they use. And it's like, what was awesome for me to see was, and I get that because it kind of simplifies things to an extent. You're able to focus on, say, the ontology and how it feeds and, how it looks at a 50,000 foot view versus, I guess, like raw data. And sometimes that stuff's proprietary and I get it. But the thing that was really cool for me to see in the AIP Con demo that Sham kind of had early in his presentation, like the first 10 to 15 minute kind of part that he had before he rolled out the individual partner presentations, is that was probably the most impactful piece, right? The actual demonstration that they were able to show, going through the user interface, showing how it intertwines with Foundry, showing how it intertwines with Apollo, and how you can really see how quick and how the instance really works, like in real time, versus this kind of like out of the box. It's probably not what I want to say, but I know exactly what you're kind of saying. It's like take the PowerPoint piece out of it to an extent.
Yeah. Imagine right now, let's say someone said, can we get a Ferrari F1 driver to present? Dude, I would love that. But more than that, I would love to see someone like a pit stop engineer who's like looking at all the levels, do the presentation saying, look, before we had this trouble with figuring out what was going to happen. So now my job is to actually what can you share my screen real quick, Amit? So this is what I was talking about. I think someone like this person would be perfect to do a presentation, someone at her level.
Hi, Vanessa.
Ich bin die Vanessa. Ich bin normalerweise auf der Linie tätig und bin Elektrikerin dort. Jetzt im Moment seit ungefähr 1,5 Jahren bin ich im OSW-Team. Das heißt, ich mache die Restarbeiten, die so nach dem Linienverkehr überbleiben und bewege mich in der ganzen Halle. Vor 2 Jahren ungefähr musste ich meinen Fuß operieren lassen und nach 4 Wochen hatte ich total keine Lust mehr zu Hause zu hocken und dann habe ich meinen Chef angerufen und habe gesagt, hey, hast du nicht irgendwas für mich, was ich auf der Arbeit machen kann, wo ich aber trotzdem meinen Fuß hochlegen kann? Und dann hat er gesagt, ja, komm mal her, wir finden da schon was und ich habe eine Idee und du kannst am Computer arbeiten.
Vanessa war eins meiner Teammitglieder und als es darum ging, was kann sie unterstützend machen, haben wir gesagt, wir könnten mal unwahrscheinlich gut so eine Auswertung in Kontur gebrauchen, damit aus dem Bauchgefühl heraus mal eine echte Zahl wird. Wie oft kommt das vor? Welche Auswirkungen hat das? Wie viel Nacharbeit beinhaltet das?
Mein Chef kam auf mich zu und meinte, pass auf, wir haben verschiedene Beschädigungen immer mal wieder. Diese Sachen habe ich aufgenommen und habe dann Informationen rausgesucht, habe ein Programm geschrieben, wo man nach diesen Informationen filtern kann. Und im Endeffekt hat man gesehen, dass man immer die Beschädigungen, wann die auftauchen, in welchem Zeitintervall, und hat dann Maßnahmen ergreifen können, um diese Sachen, die auftauchen, abstellen zu können.
Also Vanessa hat natürlich dadurch, dass sie am Bauplatz arbeitet, kennt sie genau die Störung und sie kennt all diese verschiedenen Formen der Störungsbeschreibung.
Ich habe Informationen wie, wo steht mein Flugzeug, welche Aufgaben wurden abgearbeitet, welche Aufgaben sind noch warum offen, wann kann ich diese Aufgaben abarbeiten, aus welchem Grund sind irgendwelche Aufgaben noch offen. Für mich ist es insofern sinnvoll, weil wir weniger Verzug haben auf der Linie. Ich muss weniger woanders hinlaufen. Ich habe weniger Verzug, weil irgendwelche anderen Gewerke dadurch geblockt sind. Gelernt habe ich insofern, dass es ja relativ einfach ist, sich selbst zu helfen. Wenn man irgendwelche Informationen braucht, dann ist es relativ einfach, sich da selbst was zusammenzubauen und dann seine eigenen Informationen zu haben.
All right, Coach Strap's in the building.
Okay, so Coach Strap, he agrees with you. He's just saying keynotes need to be leadership. I mean, look, I agree with that, but I also think a nurse giving a keynote, I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world. Now, the question is, can they do it in an executive way that shows the executive presence? But it couldn't be the worst.
Yeah, I'm not a very good public speaker, right? So having Maddie Mullah up there representing UDOC, probably gonna make a joke. It's probably not gonna hit well.
Nah, bro. I think you would kill it. Some of the presenters that I saw and they're boring as shit, bro. So no, trust me.
That is true, bro. There were some that were fucking bad.
You are the ideal person to do it for one reason, because you have a problem and Palantir solved your issue, so you can describe in the easiest way possible how Palantir solved your problem, instead of someone at the management level. They're like, okay, so how did Palantir solve your problem? Okay, let me take the notes. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay. Yeah, we had a problem, and according to Matt, this is how Palantir solved it, without saying according to Matt. You know what I mean? Because your enthusiasm would carry over into your words rather than someone else. I mean, so I'm not saying that some of their people haven't been good, because they obviously
the Cisco guy was awesome, right?
Yeah, the Cisco guy was awesome. The Tyson Foods guy was awesome. But I'm just saying that hearing from the most bottom level person, I'm not saying you're the bottom level either, Matt. Don't take that offensive. I'm just saying, someone who's an active user of the platform, and it's actually something that they like, would be a highlight. Because if I'm a CEO at the other side, I'd be like, wow, I guess I'm trying to do right by my workers and give them the best product. So it's one thing if another CEO is just saying that this is a great thing, but if I'm hearing that another company's underlings love it, I could bring it to my underlings too.
So 2 notes about that video, because that's where I live pretty much day to day, is using exactly those applications that she uses within Foundry. The first one that was kind of showing the time series data and the graphics with that was called Quiver. And that basically is hopefully either streamed data directly from, say, what they're talking about, which is what I anticipate that they're using when it comes to like the Formula One drivers, is they're looking at different tire temperatures, pressures, and stuff in real time. And hopefully you can sync that up with where they are on the track to be able to understand like the data as it kind of comes in. The cool thing is with that is you can highlight specific areas and annotate, right? What is this anomaly? Hey, we need to investigate this. You can tag certain people, get to the bottom of it. And those annotations kind of stay there forever, right? It's not like, it disappears. It's like, because it's linked to that specific piece of data, it's there forever. So somebody in the future could come back and reference that exact chart. And of course you can zoom in on specific things. You could zoom out to certain things. You would look at one lap. You would look at the entirety of the race. You can do that, and they'd be like, "Hey, there's an annotation on lap 37. Let's zoom in and zoom in." I think that's pretty cool. And the second piece of that was the reports. It was kind of like where you saw the histograms and stuff like that. The thing that's nice about that is because you can annotate that and send that out daily as a report to specific people that have certain rights within your organization. And the thing that's nice about that is, like, say you were to have to send out a report. I used to have to do a global production report for UDOC, and it would have to be reviewed every single Wednesday before we sent it to the executive team. And it was a PowerPoint presentation. You had to go through, update your Power BI, look through everything, make sure everything was right, versus like if you have that reports, it's connected up to your streaming data. And so whatever the streaming data is what the streaming data is, and it automatically updates. And you can set it once a week, you can set it once a day, you can set it multiple times a day. And it's just such an applicable tool for the modern enterprise versus having to kind of like go back and make these manual slide packs that you have to do. And anyway, I just think it's just another way that you can look at the data and slice the data that just adds another step that quickens your day rather than the way that we used to do things, say, 10, 15 years ago.
Okay, that's perfect right there. I have a question to ask the chat. Okay, what Matt just said right now, was that not easy to understand? Rather than a CTO trying to use fancy jargon to blah 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 his way through the entire presentation, I want to ask the chat, what did you think of the thing that Matt just said? Was that easy enough to understand, and how that actually improved his process from doing all the bullshit that he had to before, just to give the executives a piece of paper, I don't want to say piece of paper, but a PowerPoint that basically had everything he had. Now he can just do that like that. Like, was that not such a great presentation, even though it was something that was so simple?
I think it was. I think it's good. I agree. If there's a mix of executives and people on the ground, I think people would be careful.
Well, that's what Coach Strap said, that, when they're doing their presentations at the one-on-one level, it's usually the guy on the ground, and the presentation is done, like the keynote is done by the executive, right? That's the thing. But I'm saying reverse that shit. Put the fucking people at the bottom at the top, and put the top people at the bottom. Let the fucking CEO stand at the booth greeting people and saying, "Hi, this is what it is. This is blah, blah, blah." The top people, let the bottom guys speak. Next AIP Con is going to be insane. I saw AIP Terminal. Put that on the, yeah.
So AIP Terminal 2.0 today, I was able to have it suggest alert remediation strategies, combine unstructured data with the ontology data, and perform actions.
Yeah. I also like the other comment that Hakan made. That was really good too. The one that's about good executives. That was good.
But pull up CodeStrap's thing again. And I think I talked about this a good bit in my interview with you, Amit, which is specifically talking about the unstructured data. And it's like, when you and I were talking about it, Amit, the example that they gave me was kind of like a warehouse had a missing piece of something that they had to sell, and they could only source it from, specific warehouses. But when that name came up, that specific warehouse name came up, it already knew, with kind of relating back to the ontology piece, it already knew that it was a warehouse within the system that it needed to then reference other warehouses, right? It wasn't like, hey, this warehouse name came up, let's go reference a part, or hey, let's go reference a serial number, or let's go reference this time series data, or something like that, right? That's the importance of ontology, because just like our brains, when you say emit, that's a person's name, in who he is, versus when somebody might say emit, if you don't have the right ontology, it might think that it's a place, or it might think that it's an apartment, or it might think that it's, so that piece and that categorization, that model library is crucial, specifically once you get into the AI world, because if you don't have that appropriately structured, which is why I said in my interview with you, Amit, if you don't have it appropriately structured years ahead of time,
there's no chance.
Then you're going to be playing both. You're going to be trying to categorize all your data, get in the right model library while you're trying to implement the AI. And that's why I thought Palantir is so beautiful, because they're thinking about it, whether or not just happened this way, or whether that's just like good business, that they were kind of putting things in this model libraries that they were. It just seems so seamless that now they can only have to focus on the AI rather than having to go back and put things in the right category. And they're still going to need to do something like that, right? That's still going to be crucial. But anyway, CodeStrap probably knows a lot better than I do. He's actually technical in the programming piece of it. I'm just a crappy.
So he's saying AIP uses APIs, application programming interfaces, so it can be embedded into other apps using the OSDK. This is one of the more popular strategies right now. AIP enabled. Yeah, so AIP is something built on top of the shit you've already got going on.
Coach Strap, can you do me a favor, man? Can you call off Alex Karp's assassins coming after me? I'm just like, every day I'm like, I wonder if this guy listens to the podcast, because if he does, I've said some not so nice things about Karp, and sometimes I worry. I'm like, am I being followed?
So here's a guy that might be presenting at AIP Con. I want to play this clip and get everyone's reaction to this.
AI
Is it Coach Strap?
in particular. I'm excited as well. R&D in particular. I mean, it's going to revolutionize just the basics of how we operate as a large company. But I think it's going to change drug discovery and drug development. We have one really fundamental advantage, I think, versus our peers. 5 years ago, we invested heavily and created an integrated data lake we call Data 42 with our partners at Palantir. And now we're leveraging that data lake to move AI very quickly forward in the company. And I think this will give us an advantage because our data is organized. It's got a clear ontology. And I'm hoping that will lead to new discoveries faster over time.
That's a whole nother segment for another day. That's really exciting. I did not realize the Palantir link there. But thank you very much.
That was fucking epic, bro.
It's happening in places you don't even realize. And I think it's very... What's that?
Let me just set it up and then I'll let you go. I think the reason that was epic is because, number one, the CNBC reporter had no idea there was a Palantir link, which is why Palantir left that in the video, because she was shocked that there's another use case for Palantir. Number two, drug discovery, I think, is like, people forget Palantir did a partnership with DuPont Therapeutics back in December. Nothing really came of that partnership, but that company was I don't know if it was a startup, but they were a company that was trying to use like molecule-oriented drug discovery. They're trying to do something in drug discovery. It was very complicated, but Palantir's been in this life and sciences drug discovery game for a while. What is drug discovery? It's taking a shit ton of big data, trying to find patterns in that data, and then do a ton of hypotheses based on those patterns to see if we can come up with the next big mega drug that can get FDA approval. If AIP can accelerate that, or AI in general can accelerate that, but in order to accelerate that, you need to have that common ontology that he's talking about. I definitely think there's a big market opportunity for pharmaceuticals and Palantir, and to have the CEO of one of the fourth largest pharmaceutical companies say that without being prompted to say that, right? That
was he a was that a CEO?
I believe that was the Novartis CEO. Yeah, no, that is the Novartis CEO. Yep. I'll pull up his name in a second. That was pretty cool. So I think that was a good moment for Palantir. Matt, go ahead.
Coach Strap, where's my T-shirt, Coach Strap? Come on, man. Where's the Palantir merch? What's going on? You're the inside now. Hook us up. Come on. At least like a signed like a card from Alex Karp saying I'm coming to get you or something.
His name is Vasant Narasimhan. That's his name, CEO.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt,
They're
go
scared
ahead.
because
I'm curious what Steven's thoughts are. He's been a little quiet. He went off camera.
Steven's playing World of Warcraft right now. I know he's playing it.
Yeah, what's your character? You a Death Knight? What are you?
Steven, you're muted. Goodness. It's a button called.
I didn't realize I was muted. Anybody who plays a Death Knight is a noob. Stop with that.
I'm with you, guy. I'm with you. I'm a shadow priest at heart. That's all I know.
Love that.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts, Steven, on that clip?
My thoughts are that I will play a druid or a mage or a paladin.
He wasn't even paying attention. He wasn't. He was
trying to get my money to level 90.
To the show.
When I turn the camera, if I had to go use the facility, So
what
no.
you mean the
Yeah, I've
bathroom?
been
Why do you
sitting
call
for
it a
2
facility?
hours. Yeah, I get it.
So
Okay, what were your thoughts on the so you didn't even hear the clip when you were okay, but you saw the Novartis clip over the week, right?
what?
The Novartis clip, Novartis CEO talk about Palantir.
No.
Okay, fuck you then, Chris. What were your thoughts?
No, it's good. Life sciences is a really, really big industry. So if this works for them, this could be a giant industry that they can capitalize on. Because if you go with one, you can get two, and then you can get multiple ones. And this entire segment is a huge, like multi-trillion-dollar business, life sciences. So, if it works for them, it could work for Sanofi. It could work for Pfizer. I think they're already partners actually. So it just keeps on going.
I think drug discovery is a place that really could benefit from something like a Palantir and its Foundry platform. And the reason being is these drugs and these trials, as we've kind of seen with what's going on with the pandemic and the vaccine rollout and everyone kind of pushing back a little bit about how quickly it happened and how the trials actually went. And I think that with the use of something like Foundry and the ontology piece, that you're able to organize data appropriately, some of that data might not necessarily disappear like it might in certain places that are biased to get things to work and work quickly. And so I think that this just gives another lens and an ability to organize that data appropriately to make sure that it doesn't disappear. And so I think that it's prudent and bridging. And of course, I could always stop, but I think that there was another healthcare company that was specifically not looking at it in terms of like patients and rollouts, but it's something that Chris and I talked about, I would say close to a year ago, about supply chain within healthcare systems and making sure that equipment, and I forget what company it was. That
Cardinal and Concordance, both of those.
Concordance, yeah. And so Chris and I were talking about it at length, and I don't want to like pat ourselves in the back to be like, we're in the future. It's like, no, we just understand what the hell Foundry is trying to accomplish, right? And so it was an inevitable case. It's not that Chris and I have some sort of insider knowledge or that we're here trying to predict the future, and it's just like, it just goes to show you how many verticals that this company and the product has itself. And so if you think about it and you understand what they're trying to do in terms of categorization and all the back end stuff, it just makes sense that these companies will continue and these industries will continue to gravitate towards something like this. It might not be worthwhile for your small restaurant, but what it might be useful for is a Darden or somebody that has a huge restaurant outlook, Wingstop. So, these places that have massive amounts of supply chain versus like the corner store, probably not something that it would be useful for. Mm-hmm. So it just goes to show you, knowing the product and understanding how it works in the back end and what they're trying to accomplish and the problems they're trying to fix, just goes to show you that you can begin to connect the dots as to where the company might be headed and how much of a runway it has in each individual industry it's gotten into and how early we really are in the investment of Palantir.
Yeah. Drug discovery is really exciting. I agree with everything you said. I mean, it's one of those things where, if, God forbid another pandemic or anything breaks out, like you need an acceleration of these unique types of drugs. I mean, there's so many diseases we haven't cured, so many different types of cancers that still exist. And I think they will be cured over the next 100 years. We'll be long gone after that, but it's going to need technology to be able to help do that. It's not just going to happen because some guy's reading a book at a library and figures out the cure. Was there any, or I guess here's the question. Do you think Novartis will be at AIP? Do you think this was planned at all? Or do you think the guy just let it out just because, I mean, he said, he kind of pitched it, right? It was one of those things where he's acting like he wanted to talk about Palantir on that interview.
Oh, he's definitely going to be there. He's definitely going to be one of the presenters. I think at this point, Palantir might actually be asking some of their key partners to make sure that they highlight this, because it's very helpful for someone else in the industry that actually using your product to say nice things about you. So yeah. Palantir might have said, hey, listen, if you could do me a favor, I might get you a better deal on the contract. Hook me up. Because at the end of the day, this is the one sentence from this guy probably got them maybe an additional $50 million in revenue. Yeah. If you think about all the conversion that could possibly happen. So yeah, I think they probably just said to the Novartis team, like, hey, listen, you guys like Palantir Foundry, right? How about we knock off a few points off of your contract and you say some nice things about us and, we call it even. And
are companies
Snowflake
allowed
does
to do that?
too.
Does that happen in corporate America a lot?
Hell yeah. Why not? Hell yeah. It's private companies, baby. That's what you're allowed to do. You can negotiate whatever you want,
Yeah. Yeah, you could imagine that, because it sounded like such a structured pitch. It didn't sound like he was casually talking about them. It sounded like he was ready for that moment, right?
But that's the thing. It makes me think, like, these guys are all part of the BBC, and I don't mean the one. I mean the Billionaire Boys Club. I know Matt's going to try to make a joke.
No,
but I think it makes me wonder, because you'll hear some people, like we've seen, talk really down upon what's going on at Palantir. They'll look down upon it, and they're on one side of the fence. You have some folks that are with them, that are rubbing shoulders with Alex, and they're really adamant about making sure that they get Palantir's name out there. They're adamant about going on CNBC and talking about the Hertz partnership. They're adamant about going to conferences and talking about. I don't want to put myself in a bind on that one. They're adamant about going to conferences and talking to others. They're adamant about having people come to FoundryCon. And the thing that I just want to know is, like, where does the line get drawn? And maybe I'm not explaining it appropriately, the kind of like brain map that I have, but it's like, eventually it's going to fill out to all these people that truly believe and rub shoulders in a certain social network.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be a line in the sand, and eventually it's going to sort of hit some sort of like saturation point. But at what point does it start to spill over where people are like, okay, well, Palantir is really not here to beat away at us. But you see that as well with like what's going on in the big tech companies, right? They lean certain ways and they're rubbing shoulders with the certain people. You see that happening with Jack Dorsey's companies. And then we saw that a little bit with Twitter, right? I mean, you kind of have these social hierarchies that rub shoulders with certain people to be able to get things to happen as appropriate. And so I'm just kind of curious, like in the back end, and we talked a little bit about when the prime minister of the UK went to the baseball game with Karp, right? And they were talking about probably more than just the first London AI hub deals, and they were probably talking about the NHS and stuff of the like. And so it gets you to start to think about what social circles some of these guys roll in to be able to make these sorts of deals. But anyway,
we are 2 months away from this NHS decision. I mean, 3 months max. So that's also going to be a big deal if we get enough
it's one thing, two things. That's not going to make a difference, and especially with the NHS, I don't think it's
not for the stock. I think if we don't get the deal, I just feel like it's bad for Palantir to not.
Oh, who gives a shit, dude? The NHS has been.
Shit. That's a big deal.
No, it's not.
Managing an entire country's healthcare system is not a big deal.
Dude, Tampa General and like some of the other like larger hospital systems that we have are way more complex than the NHS is. And the NHS, you have to deal with the political ramifications. I don't even think that involvement with the NHS is a good idea to begin with, but that's just my opinion. Anytime you get like government involvement in something like this in healthcare, then anything that happens, it's like you're putting a target on your own back. Oh, Palantir, because of Palantir, there's more deaths because of cancer. Yeah, like you can paint Palantir in any light. And I'm guessing Foxglove or whatever the hell those companies are, they'll use every single opportunity they can to make Palantir's life a living hell while they're in the NHS.
But if Palantir performs and there's less wait times and less people have cancer, less people are more surgeries, that's the upside risk to it, right?
Yeah, I could see it having huge implications in the rest of the G8 countries and their healthcare systems. So I think that could spill over. Somebody said it, the EU. I could see it spilling over to Canada. I could see it spilling over to Mexico. I could see it spilling over to a lot of places that align. Does
Mexico have socialized healthcare?
Good question. I don't know.
I know Canada definitely does. I'll look that up. Okay. Steve, it's finally time for you to talk because we're bringing up your article that's trending on Seeking Alpha. It's in the description for those that want to check it out. Where do you want to take this? I got the whole article up here. So what charts you want to go to? Title is Palantir can continue higher. So it's a stock article. You're saying the stock can go higher.
You're not even following the guy.
You know what? While he finally figures out his own thing, how cool would it be that Alex Karp gets on stage, points to like a projector, and down comes a screen, and it's freaking Zelensky on the other side. And basically, that would be that. How cool would that be? At that point, it would
be cooler
make
than a BBC.
It would be on every major headline.
The BBC would have to cover that if that happens. Like 1000%, they would have to cover that. That'd be crazy. All right, Steve, where do we want to take this article?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just wrote what I'm looking for in Q2 earnings, and I think this is make or break.
Okay, so let's read a little bit from here. What am I looking for from earnings? Palantir guided for revenue of 528 to 532 million, adjusted income of operations 118 to 122, and to be GAAP profitable. Full year guidance consistent of revenue between 2.2 billion, adjusted income of 506. For Palantir to continue the trajectory and get back into the 20s, I feel we need to see growth across every aspect of the business that Palantir is capable of delivering. First is customer count. Any words on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I want to see, and it is almost midnight and I'm freaking half asleep. So you would have to go by the numbers I put because I don't have it freaking memorized right now. But I want to see the trajectory stay the same. Just bring up the chart. You don't have to go through the numbers. I mean, the biggest thing with Palantir was this is a company that was always known as a black box. And the big question was always commercial. It wasn't government contracts because they were embedded in the military industrial complex. It was, does it translate over to the commercial side? We've seen exponential growth on the commercial side, and we need that to continue going up. And I'm hoping with all these conferences that continues to occur. And I want to see revenue get past 600 million in a quarter this year.
So you want that to happen next quarter or Q3?
No, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen next quarter, but I think revenue's got to be over 550 million next quarter.
So that's 20 million more than they guided for.
And I think they're sandbagging because to get to their high-end expectations, they would need revenue to come in at like 550, 575, and 601 million just to hit the high end that they got it for. So if you go back to 2020 or Q1 of 2021, I don't remember which presentation it was in, they said they were going to be 4 billion plus in 2025 revenue. They're not on track for that right now. So I want to see them hit the high end and get past 600 million in a quarter, because then that paves the way to get to $1 billion quarterly revenue. And I think we got to get there. And the biggest thing to me is obviously profitability. Their free cash flow margin is amazing. It's 35%, well, 34.77%.
Why is that amazing for a SaaS company?
We're not talking about gross profits. We're talking about the free cash flow margin. Every dollar that's generated, you're getting over 30%, more than a third of the dollars free cash flow. That is huge, absolutely huge. So if they continue to go on that and go down to Salesforce, the Salesforce graphs.
And that graphic about free cash, that's why I've been so bullish about the company for such a long time. It's because everyone was talking about they're not profitable. It's like, well, they're not profitable due to the share-based compensation and how that hits the net income on a GAAP basis. But if you look at that,
net income is easier to distort because of the way GAAP accounting principles are. Free cash flow has always been my favorite metric because it's cash in versus cash out.
Yeah.
So,
but the valuations for high tech growth should always be done in price to free cash flow. That's the key.
And I get there in this article. Yeah. So go down to the Salesforce stuff. So I want to see them do a Salesforce arc. And if they continue on this trajectory, I think they can. Look, Salesforce is a $240, $250 billion market cap company. I mean, take the TTM out of it because we only have one new quarter in numbers. But you look at that arc of revenue growth, it's absolutely immense. Salesforce's free cash flow, the next slide down, I mean, they're generating around 6.5, 7 billion free cash flow a year.
What is their margin?
24%, I think.
Oh, so we have a better free cash flow margin.
It was like 23, 24.
Yeah, it's in the low 20s.
So the only way you can get a like above 30% free cash flow margin is if you typically have 80% or whatever adjusted gross margins, right? That's the key to getting there. That's why like Coca-Cola can't do that.
The key is low capex, and I mean that's really the key. Spending less cash. Go to the chart under the table underneath. So people love to say, this is where I get into a lot of arguments with people, that 30x free cash flow is not realistic to value companies at. Well, can I curse on this?
Of course, Steven. I've been waiting for this to come from you.
Fuck it isn't. Pepsi Cola is not a fucking tech company. Trades at 45 times free cash flow.
What?
Not a tech company. Trades at 29 times free cash flow. Like,
wow.
Not tech companies are not the only companies that trade at 30x or over free cash flow. Take Tesla and Nvidia and them out of it, okay? Oracle trades at 43 times. Costco trades at 42 times free cash flow.
That's because their Cheerios are phenomenal.
So to say that these multiples are ridiculous and tech companies are overvalued, okay, well, then you got to say that almost everything is overvalued because Pepsi is a defensive stock, and that's trading at 45 times.
Yo, if a defense contractor, like in a mission, is drinking Pepsi, could Pepsi be considered a defense contracting company?
Very funny.
Okay, can you share my screen real quick? So this was provided by Brad Gertzner with Altimeter Capital. It's a really great breakdown of software margins. We can see where everyone is. Adobe, baby, Adobe's at the top. Look at that free cash flow.
Wow.
Adobe's just a money generator. You know, it's like literally an ATM.
Adobe's free cash flow is Premiere.
Yeah. Now look at our friend C3.
Did you get the joke? It's like Premiere. It's like, all right.
Let's look at our friend C3 AI. They're not very well. They're
what's
at the bottom end.
Oh, wow.
And let's look at Palantir. Where's Palantir? Palantir, right here. You see right here? They're above the median. Boom. Right above the median, I think. Yeah. In terms of 12%. So you can see here, these are probably like the less investable stuff. This is literally on the cusp of really good investing. And I suspect over time, Palantir's goal is to go from here to here to here to probably somewhere around here.
Chris, what time frame is he using? Is he using TTM?
I think he's NTM, which is I think it's TTM. Yeah.
What is that? Yeah. Next 12 months?
I feel like it's next 12 months.
Yeah, it's next 12 months.
So I was doing the free cash flow on a quarterly basis, and their margin was 34.77% in Q1. Q4 was 14.53. I mean, and my big thing is they got to stay above 30% margins. They can't revert. They just can't do it. Like, they got to beat estimates on all fronts. They got to gain new customers. They got to gain more contracts. And they can't go below a 30% free cash flow margin. And look, if they are not GAAP profitable this quarter, this thing's going to implode, in my opinion. Like, they got to be GAAP profitable. They can't set it.
Yeah, the valuation is extended. The valuation is extended.
And if they miss again next quarter, it is completely going to screw up their possibility of being in the S&P 500 in Q4. I mean, they could possibly be in it in Q4 because you have to have the sum of the trailing 12 months, so the sum of the past 4 quarters, be GAAP profitable to be considered for eligibility, 12 billion market cap and some other metrics. So,
yeah, but that's easy. But that's easily done, dude. As an executive, you just cut the fat. That's all you do. You figure out where your operational expenses are that are literally draining cash, that are not providing value. You do operational, late cutoffs where you have to, and there you go. You can maintain your free cash flow. I mean, most of the time, especially with Palantir being a data-centric company, they can see where their waste is and reduce down their waste and make sure that they keep their GAAP profitability up. Whether that means laying off non-performing staff, ending contracts that they have with vendors, catering services, catering to the office, closing some leases that are existing right now that they're not utilizing. So those kinds of things are what management can actually take action on. So I do not think that they're going to go the other way in terms of GAAP profitability and free cash flow.
To me, the big thing is, can they sustain? Because revenue growth has been declining quarter over quarter. I think it's just under 20% now. I mean, I'm sorry, year over year. If they can sustain 18%, which I don't know if that's likely or not. We saw previous estimates that were really high in 2 years ago. But if they can maintain 18% over the next decade and maintain a 33% free cash flow margin, they'll be generating $11.78 billion in revenue and $3.89 billion in free cash flow. At a 32x multiple, that values the company at $124 billion.
Coach Strap, if you're still on here, can you recommend Alex Karp finally do a venture arm? You got the free cash flow now. You got a balance sheet that's stacked. Use some of that money, create a venture fund so your former employees who are looking to build something on their own that want to break out, you let them leave with a few dollars here and there with some seed funding, let them go wild and create something new and get a 20x, maybe 100x return on your money. Every other Silicon Valley SaaS vendor right now has a venture arm. Palantir, with all the experience that they have, because they're founders, they have Peter Thiel, who's probably one of the greatest Silicon Valley investors. You need a venture arm. Use that free cash flow to develop other companies that are going to be running on your platform and that are actually going to be able to sell products and use Palantir as the platform. I don't know, just what does it say? They enable alums. I know, but they don't have a venture arm. As far as I know, they don't have a venture arm.
That is confusing why they don't have a small $20 million venture fund.
I would say a venture arm that's directly tied to their balance sheet, because yes, they enable alums to build value, which is great, but at the end of the day, it doesn't do anything for shareholders. Right? If a company 10x's, yes, that alum did very well, but what does that do for shareholders? Whereas at least with Snowflake, huh?
I was going to say, it might be something that happens. I mean, at the moment, they probably were just looking forward to getting as much revenue through the door as they could. They were probably trying to get to the GAAP profitability piece. And now that that's kind of in sight and they're looking to hold on to that throughout the rest of 2023 and go into 2024. And now they have $2 billion in the bank. I mean, maybe that's just the next obvious step for them, is to kind of start thinking about something like that.
Do you think Foundry for Builders is basically their venture fund? Because they added a new drone company for Foundry for Builders last week. I mean, that's, or
I didn't like seeing Hex end up being with Snowflake Ventures, considering that the founder was former Palantir.
Well, what I do see as a potential avenue for, because there was some news about FedStart this week, and some of the
we got to talk about that last.
We're starting to use that. I see that as a potential venture arm, whether intentional or unintentional.
Okay, so let me set that up, and then you'll go real quick. FedStart product they launched a couple weeks ago. Basically, they said there's a shit ton of defense spending from VCs for these defense tech startups, about $34 billion last year. All this money makes no sense if these startups can't sell to the government because they don't have IL4, IL5, or IL6 accreditation. So if we could basically license our platform to promise them that their software, whatever they're selling to the government, is secure within what they call our container, we can just get, SaaS margins off that, consulting fees off that, and there's another way to make more money. So Matt, I guess, do you see that as kind of like their venture arm for the defense technology space?
Yeah, and so to give people some context, so Palantir has gotten FedStart piece of their infrastructure that kind of Amit was talking to IL5. And I forget what company it was, but it was the first that I had seen sort of for FedStart.
Bloodhound.
Yeah, Bloodhound. And I forget who owns Bloodhound.
Spectre Ops.
Spectre Ops, yeah. So it's a government-facing sort of piece. And so it kind of kickstarts exactly what Amit said. If they find something, or the people that create those companies obviously are going to integrate with Palantir to be able to use their software. I feel like if it fits their culture, because Palantir is a very specific culture, then it's something that might be an ability, unintentionally or intentionally, that Palantir could pick something up and add that to them. And I'm assuming that if these guys are able to create very niche-like products, which is kind of what Palantir is all about, then it can kickstart it right back into Palantir. Anyway,
Chris, what do you think about this? There's a shit ton of money. Even Mark Andreessen, one of the biggest venture capitalists in the world, said they missed out on Palantir going into defense technology. Do you think Palantir could capitalize off taking a decent amount of that? Because you can't sell unless you have accreditation, and Palantir can just license their accreditation.
I'm not too well versed on the subject, so I couldn't tell you. I have no clue. I just I know that this is a space that's growing a lot more than past years, because I think the military and government itself, especially the Defense Department, realizes that most warfare that's coming is not going to be kinetic warfare. It's going to be a combination of kinetic and non-kinetic. So you're going to have to make sure that your software is 10 times better than what it is today. And the government in the past has always been terrible at software. So the private companies in the US are like the best companies in the world. It's kind of stupid for the U.S. government not to reach into the private sector partnerships to create products and tools in terms of software that could really like be game changers in the future. So yeah, I think overall the sector is growing, and this is one of those areas where Palantir's already got a leg up on their competitors, and they could capitalize on it. So no, I think this is a good business for them. Let it grow.
Okay. We're getting near 12 o'clock. It's 12:05. I have one last topic for tonight, even though we're still 16 days away from earnings. I was looking at some of the retail shareholder questions today on Robinhood, and it reminded me we're a special group of investors. There was people saying, when are you going to give a dividend? And I'm just like, all right.
Y'all retarded. Venture arm. That's what.
So here's my question. Let's end it off, and the chat can participate too. What is one question, if you got to be an analyst, to ask Alex Karp directly on earnings, you would ask? You can take a second, think about it. What would be one question you would ask?
Considering that you let Andrew's engineer, who used to be one of your senior employees, go and got no value on him whatsoever, are you considering launching a venture arm to mitigate that so that you can build value for shareholders instead of just stockpiling cash and doing barely anything with it?
Okay, solid question. Steve, what would be your question?
I think I'd want to know how they're going to use their cash and what their plan is. Because to get to a valuation that I want to see it get to, the numbers have to make sense. Yeah. This can't be something that is 80 times free cash flow. I want to know how they're going to use their cash to accelerate growth, because look, I would say that most of us think AIP is going to be huge, and that they're going to continue to grow customers, but they got to continue to do what they're doing. Stockpile of cash, no debt. So what do? Are you going to acquire somebody? You're going to build another arm? How do you allocate that cash to drive shareholder value?
Okay. Matt, UDoc CEO, your question?
UDoc CEO. No, it's far from. Palantir has released 3 major platforms over the past 5 to 6 years. My question to them would be, while AIP is revolutionary and will connect a lot of the great products that we have from Foundry, Apollo, Gotham, where does Palantir see their runway in the next 5 to 10 years of additional platforms that will be released that people might not necessarily be thinking about? And do you see those as small additions that will integrate well with Foundry and others? Or is there other sort of platforms that other companies haven't even really thought of yet that you guys will kind of be the first to market for?
Okay.
And I don't think I think people don't give that credit, right? I think people are just like, they assume, and then they get excited about or don't even think about, what's next, and they don't think that Palantir hasn't reinvented themselves 3 to 4 times over the past 5 years, 6 years, and I don't think people are thinking about that. So I think that's very important.
Well, I stand corrected. According to this website, I just looked it up to see if there's something called Palantir Ventures, and someone's already got the name and the domain. I'm pretty sure they're not involved with the regular Palantir, but someone created, and it says, "Welcome to Palantir Ventures, our focus on creating and building businesses from ideas through exit."
So there is a venture firm that exists.
Yeah.
I would simply ask, and maybe my question would be answered during the presentation, but what has this whole hundreds of conversations, 12 months of demand in 1 month turned into? Like, even if it's not crazy revenue yet, is the adoption of AIP happening at a rate where you think the land, expand, scale strategy is working? And I'm pretty sure they're going to answer that to an extent, but I would want to know what they think the trajectory of AIP really looks like, and what sectors, like what industries do they think? I know they're going to say, yeah, it could be big in every industry, but like life sciences, energy, healthcare, like really, where do you see AIP going from there? I would also ask about Apollo, because I think we've barely gotten any updates on what Apollo is doing in the commercial sector, probably because it's not selling as well. And I would want to know, do you have a plan?
I think that's false.
To get it scale. Hopefully it is false, but we don't know as shareholders. We know nothing about Apollo publicly from a business perspective, in my opinion.
I just want to highlight really quick how many companies that Palantir missed out on in terms of not having a VC fund to back some of their own people. Adipar, which Joe Lonsdale, of course, I'm not sure that they could have gotten into that anyway, because the fallout between Lonsdale. Affirm, they could have got into Affirm very early because Nathan Gettings was an original co-founder. right?
Oh, really? A Palantir?
Amplitude. Yep.
Wow, I don't know that.
Anduril, Blend Labs, Ironclad, OpenSea. You see what I mean? These are all the things that could have been unicorns that Palantir could have disproportionately benefited from having former employees. You didn't have a venture fund. Employees left. They took their know-how and their knowledge with them, and you got none of the benefits. You basically trained a killer and then did not capitalize on him when he went out there and did a fucking phenomenal job in developing software. So venture fund, do a venture fund. Your former employees
free at this point. They got 1.4, 1.6 billion sitting in T-bills, generating 3-4%. Use that interest to set up a venture fund. It's free.
Yup.
Free.
Yeah.
Yup. LP
17
baby.
million. They got 17 million from that interest. Imagine giving 100,000 to like 40 people that want to start something.
Okay, they got 17 million. Extrapolate that for the year and throw it into a fund. Throw $50 million into a fund. It's free money.
Yeah.
Yep. And now they can build products and software based on Palantir Foundry and Foundry applications. And now you've got a long stream of revenue coming your way in the future. Plus all that I don't know, $1 million investment can turn into a fucking $1 billion return if you play it right. You know, so just saying, better than T-bills.
Stake. I mean,
isn't that what the SPAC thing was?
Someone said, Chris, they were busy investing in really successful SPACs.
The problem with the SPACs too is they wasn't idea to inception, and it wasn't Palantir people. Like the thing about Palantir people, they go through like 7 rounds of interviews to get in. These are smart motherfuckers. So when they are like, I have an idea, you as a company should listen to this killer that was smart enough to get into your company about their idea, you know, versus Faraday Future.
But I think a lot of things that that you need to get a little bit further down in terms of the profitability and maybe the cash point where you're truly profitable and making a lot of cash to the point where then you can make systematic $50 million, $100 million investments into things and not really even notice it being gone. And I think there's just with what happened with the SPAC thing, I think it's gonna always, while it is different, I think from the eye of the normal retail investor that doesn't really think about it the same, I think you need to give it a little bit of time before that.
I don't think anyone would care. The SPACs were public companies. That's why they got scrutiny. Startups are known to fail, right?
But who else? But you're studying it pretty. You're studying it pretty in depth, Amit. I mean, you're the one looking at this and talking about it once a week. The average retail investor is going to be like, "Oh, this is a bad idea."
That's true. That's true.
I mean, that's me chatting, but I think that that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
That's where capital allocation comes in, man. You have to be smart as a capital allocator to figure that out. I feel like they're going to do it. Then Chris is going to take all the credit. Yeah, of course, man. That's what I do. I took credit for all the Foundry cons that they had. That was my idea. Fuck Alex Karp. He didn't figure that out. I did. All right. Ukraine. I told him, hey, you need to reach out to Ukraine.
Modern Warfare videos in February 2022. I remember that. That was with CodeStrap on the podcast. Yeah.
I was like, hey, listen, Ukraine, and I created a video way before Palantir announced that they were going to be in Russia. I did a video saying, hey, Palantir should probably reach out to Russia. I should actually publish that and tag Alex Karp on it and saying, thanks for listening to me, Alex. Good job.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Chris Karp. There we go. Chris for COO. Yeah. We need another brown guy as COO.
Yo, get more brown people. And I feel like every time I see a company and the more brown people that are in it, the more successful it is. Stop hiring the Chiefs. Hire the Indians. That's right. Stop hiring the Chiefs. Hire the Indians.
All right, everybody. That's it for us this week. Thank you so much for joining 300 people. Everyone's links are in the descriptions. Check out Steven's article. Make sure it trends for the rest of the weekend. I'm going to put it again one more time in the chat so you guys can see it. Everyone's Twitter's there. Please make sure to follow us on Twitter. If you're not on it, set up an account. Big Palantir community there.
Listen, before we go, let me just tell you what I'm gonna do for Alex Karp. If he were to hire me, this is me with Alex Karp. Okay.
I'll watch him demonetize the whole.
Oh no, Silicon Valley.
Please have a seat. I'm not sitting this summer. Of course. Incredible. What's weighing on you, Gavin? Jared Dunn quit today to join Pied Piper. I hate Richard Hendricks. The little Pied Piper prick. Is that wrong? In the hands of a lesser person, perhaps? in the hands of the enlightened, hate can be a tool for great change. You're right, once again. Audius, play John Lennon's Imagine.
Sorry, I didn't want to get you demonetized.
That's what you would do.
That's what I would do. I would be his spiritual guru of software marketing. That's what I would do for him. Yeah, I'd be like, Chris, what should I do? You should create a venture fund.
I think I should rewatch that scene.
Use your existing resources to build more resources. You know, that's what I would do.
Yeah, I watched Silicon Valley in 2019 when I wasn't a startup founder. I should probably watch it again now that I am. I would probably relate to it even way.
It's a hilarious show.
It was great. It was great. It was great.
Yep.
All right, everybody. See you guys next week. Good night.